Right resolve in real life. Buddha's path to an inner pleasure, concentration. Right resolve and right concentration are very closely connected. The beginning of the definition for right concentration says, secluded from sensuality, secluded from unskillful qualities. It refers to the work of right resolve. You're resolving to stay away from sensuality through resolve on renunciation, which means you're not going to let yourself get engaged in sensual thinking. You're resolved on non-ill will, i.e., goodwill. And you're resolved on harmlessness, i.e., compassion, so that you can actually carry out those resolves. Those are the beginning conditions for getting into right concentration. One of the suttas talks about two types of right resolve, mundane and noble. Mundane right resolve is the three resolves I just mentioned. Noble right resolve, basically, is the first jhana, when you've succeeded at clearing out of the mind things like sensuality, ill will, and harmfulness. The concentration also helps with your right resolve because a lot of these resolves are not easy to stick with. We can think in the abstract that, yes, it would be a good thing to have the mind free from things like sensual obsession, ill will, or harmfulness. But when you actually start living with human beings and putting up with the stresses and strains of daily life, it's very easy to slip into sensuality, ill will, and harmfulness. This is where the concentration helps and gives you another place for the mind to feed, because the things that are going to pull us away from right resolve are mainly two: painful feelings and harsh words. Those are things the Buddha said we should learn how to tolerate. In other words, you have to build up patience and endurance for them. And concentration is really good for building up those qualities. When the Buddha's talking about patience, it's not simply a matter of gritting your teeth and putting up with hardships. It's learning how to find a sense of pleasure, even in the midst of hardships, so that you have something to sustain you. Learning how to get a sense of well-being as you settle in with the body, settle in with the breath. That's good sustenance. So the two factors, right resolve, which is an aspect of discernment, and right concentration, go together. The discernment begins with the realization that, as the Four Noble Truths say, if the mind is suffering, it's because of something in the mind. An abbot of a monastery in England was talking one time about a number of members of his community who were complaining all the time about the conditions in the monastery. This wasn't right, that wasn't right. And his analysis was, they don't understand the Four Noble Truths. If you spend your time complaining about things outside, even if you're not complaining out loud, just complaining to yourself, you're going to miss seeing what you're doing to make the situation intolerable and hard to bear. And when you're focused on things outside of the mind, the pains, the unpleasant things, it's very easy to want to go for sensual thinking. As the Buddha said, if you don't see any alternative to pain aside from sensual thinking, that's what you're going to go for, the sensual thinking. Then you start thinking about people who've caused you pain, who've said nasty things to you, done bad things to you or to people you love or respect or care for. It's very easy to feel ill will for them. And then you think, okay, once they're down, once I have the opportunity, I'm going to get some revenge. That's harmfulness. So you've got to turn your thinking around, and concentration helps give you a foundation for doing that. If you can create a sense of well-being inside and feed on that, you're less likely to be feeding on things outside and less likely to be complaining about them. You can notice that something's not right, but if it's not interfering with your internal food source, it's a lot easier to bear with it. The things that we have trouble bearing with are the ones that we bring inside, the things we try to feed on. Sometimes you bring them inside simply by the way you breathe. You get upset about something and your breath changes and becomes intolerable. It's not the situation that's intolerable. It's your breathing that's intolerable, but you lash out. So you constantly have to be on the lookout for when the breath changes. One of the reasons why we practice here, sitting with our eyes closed, focusing on the breath, is to make ourselves more and more sensitive to this aspect of the body and its relationship to events in the mind. Then we can take that sensitivity out into our other activities, so that when someone says something displeasing or harsh or nasty, we look immediately at our breath to make sure that the breath doesn't get affected. Remember the image the Buddha taught to Rahula when he said, "Meditate like wind." That's breath as part of the wind element. It doesn't mean that you blow your mind around. It means that wind can blow disgusting things around, but the wind doesn't get disgusted. In the same way that when it blows pleasant things around, it doesn't get elated. It's just wind. So, when there are good or bad things in your environment, try to keep your mind, just awareness. Try to keep your breath on an even keel. When you've got the breath on your side, that's half the battle right there. Otherwise, your greed, aversion, and delusion hijack the breath and hold it hostage. They say, okay, we're going to be making a lot of unpleasant feelings here in your body until you do something in line with what we want, and only then will we let it go. That's a pretty high price, because what they want you to do can often be very unskillful, and you'll be the one to pay the price, not them. So don't let them take the breath hostage. Try to be on top of how your breathing feels and learn how to breathe in a way that feels good, even when things are falling apart around you, because that way your head will be a lot clearer in spite of the situation, and you can think of the most skillful thing to do. When you're not stabbing yourself with events around you, you can fall back on the mantra we talked about today. I can take this. I can take this. You can survive these things because you're not bringing them in to wear yourself down. This doesn't mean that you're totally passive. When you see something out of line, something that's inappropriate, and you have the ability to change it, go ahead and change it. But there are a lot of things in the world, a lot of people in the world that are very hard to change. But as the Buddha pointed out, when we're living with things we don't like or are separated from things we do like, the suffering is not in the things that we like or don't like. It's with the clinging and the craving, which means you've got to look inside. This is what right resolve deals with. It reminds you that craving and clinging are the things you've got to watch out for. Sensual craving is number one. You've got to be very alert and very attuned to the harm done by a lot of your sensual fantasies. Even if you don't act on them, they get the mind in a certain mood. It starts getting sloppy. When it starts getting sloppy, this little slip doesn't matter. That little slip doesn't matter. All I want is my pleasure. That's the attitude it has. And then when you do start acting out on these things, you can cause yourself a lot of trouble. You can cause other people a lot of trouble too. So the concentration is there to give you an alternative pleasure. It's the combination of discernment and concentration, seeing the drawbacks of sensuality and having this alternative pleasure. That's what enables you to get past that sloppiness. When you're dealing with difficult people, confronted with feelings of pain and harsh words, having a place of concentration really helps. Even if you can't occupy the whole body and fill it and suffuse it with pleasure down to every last cell, the fact that you have some part of the body that you can make comfortable allows you to find your sustenance there so that you have the strength to deal with the pain, the strength to deal with the unpleasant words. Because you've got this alternative source of food, you're not out there stuffing those things into your stomach and then finding that they give you indigestion. Ajaan Lee says when someone else spits out some nasty words and you take them inside to think about, it's as if they've spit something on the ground and you've picked it up and are eating it. Of course you're going to get sick. And who are you going to blame? You were the one who picked it up. So even though people are aiming their words at you, you have to learn how to sidestep them and see the words as their karma, as having nothing to do with you, even though they're saying your name over and over and over again. Just remind yourself that they're aiming at their concept of you, and they're not aiming directly at you. You're not their concept of you, so they can't hit you at all. In Thailand, one of the insults commonly hurled around is to call someone else a dog, and the different Ajaans have interesting ways of dealing with that. Ajaan Fun says, "They call you a dog, you look around, you don't have a tail, and they don't have tails either, so if you're a dog and they look like you, then they must be dogs as well." Or Ajaan Lee's way of saying it, "You look around you, you know that dogs do have tails. You look at yourself. You don't have a tail." Okay, what they're saying isn't true, but there is an advantage when they call you a dog, he adds. Dogs have no laws. They're free to do as they like. So whatever the insult, learn how to look at it in a way that gets you out of the line of fire and allows you to see some humor in the situation. When you can laugh at their insults, you're far away from them. They can't hit you. Now don't laugh out loud at them because that'll cause trouble, but you can laugh to yourself. There's a story in the canon where the monks are walking along as a group, and a teacher from another sect together with his student are following behind them. The student is praising the Buddha, and the teacher is denouncing the Buddha. The monks got upset because of the teacher's denunciation of the Buddha, but the Buddha told them, "Even when run-of-the-mill people praise me, they don't know what they're talking about. So why should I get upset when they're denouncing me?" Try to develop the attitude that if there really is something true about what they say, you can learn. Otherwise, you just let it go. You can live with a lot of things in this world and not get tempted to do unskillful things in response. Because that's the main problem. When people do unskillful things to us, there's an immediate tendency for us to turn around and do unskillful things to them. And that goes for things that we like as well as for things we don't like. So we've got to learn how to resist the temptation to respond to the unskillful things that we like in unskillful ways, or to respond to the unskillful things that we don't like in unskillful ways. Right? Resolve helps right concentration because it brings in the element of discernment. Simply learning how to breathe well, simply learning how to be calm in the face of something, doesn't deal with the whole problem. There's still the problem of the I and the me that gets in the way and feels injured by these things. If you can learn how to take those concepts apart to see whatever I you have doesn't need to be in the line of fire and isn't harmed by the other things that other people do to you, then you put yourself in a position of safety. Safe not only from what they say, but also from your own potential unskillful reactions. That way, you really can carry right resolve into the world with all of its messiness and keep your resolve intact. This principle applies to all the factors of the path. They're not designed simply for situations where practice is easy and conditions are good. They're meant to be followed all the time, when they're easy, when they're hard, when the world outside is supporting you, when the world outside is not supporting you. You want to have the wherewithal in terms of your virtue and your concentration and your discernment to protect your path, i.e., to protect your thoughts, your words, and your deeds to keep them in line with what you know will ultimately lead to true happiness, to the true end of suffering. When you keep that goal in mind, you realize that a lot of the other baggage that you tend to carry with you is an unnecessary burden and you can let it go. Wind, fire, water, earth, space. A while back, I was reading a piece, someone complaining about the idea of translating the word kusala as skillful, saying that in Western ethical thought the idea of skillfulness plays no role, so why should we introduce it when we talk about Buddhism? That's a very narrow attitude, as if whatever Buddhism has to offer has to go through our filter first before we'll accept it, and we're unwilling to have our horizons expanded. Actually, introducing the idea of skillfulness to ethics would be a very useful thing, a very skillful thing, because it makes the point that, on the one hand, mere good intentions are not enough. They have to be skillful to get genuinely good results. On the other hand, the idea of skillfulness emphasizes the extent to which you can learn from your actions and apply what you've learned to future actions. This is just one of the many ways in which Buddhism introduces a lot of concepts that may seem foreign to us at first. But the more you get to live with the concepts, the more you realize that they deal with your direct experience, and they're very useful, especially for the purposes that the Buddha assigns to all of his teachings, which are to understand suffering and stress and to use that understanding to put an end to them. Another Buddhist concept that's very often underestimated is the concept of property, dhatu in Pali, sometimes here translated as element. People tend to think of the medieval elements when they hear that, something we've outgrown in the West. But it's very useful when you're meditating to think in terms of these properties. In English, we have the word proprioception, which means your sense of the body as felt from within. And this where the properties are really useful, because they give us a framework for dividing that sense of the body from within into categories. There's breath or wind, which is a sense of energy, the fire, which is a sense of warmth, liquid, which is a sense of coolness, and then earth, which is a sense of solidity. And as you sit here inhabiting your body, it's useful to have a sense of these different aspects of what you're feeling. It's good for concentration, good for discernment. In terms of concentration, there's that nice passage where the Buddha gives instructions to Rahula, even before Rahula starts doing breath meditation, saying, "Make your mind like earth," he says. Earth doesn't get disturbed by nice things or unpleasant things. You can throw garbage on earth and earth doesn't react. This is a good image to hold in mind when you're going through a difficult situation. People are saying things you don't want to hear or doing things you don't want to see done, and your mind is reacting. Ask yourself, is the earth part of your body reacting? Are the bones reacting? The bones are not. Try to get a sense of your bones and then make your awareness like the bones, like that sense of solidity. That way you find that you can endure things that otherwise you wouldn't be able to endure. You learn a lesson from earth. These properties are also useful as you're trying to settle down and gain a sense of well-being in the body, especially with the breath. You can think of the breath as a whole body process. It makes the breath a much better object for meditation than just having it in one spot, say at the nose, or just the air coming in and out that can be felt at the nose or the lips. After all, we're trying to develop a state of full body awareness in our concentration. And it's good to have an object to focus on that does extend throughout the body. So when they talk about singleness of preoccupation, it's single in both senses. Single in the sense that it's the one thing you're focusing on, and single in the sense that it's a single sensation filling the body. Of the various elements, the breath is the easiest to manipulate, the easiest to nudge into the different directions to adjust and get it so it's just right, feeling good coming in, feeling good going out. The breath, after all, is your first experience of the body. We have a tendency to think that the solidity of the body is there first in our awareness, and then the breath comes in afterwards. But no, the breath is what enables you to sense the body to begin with. It's the medium through which we can sense the other properties of the body. If it weren't for the energy going through the nerves, going through the blood vessels, you wouldn't be sensing the body at all. So, breath is there first, and the other properties come later. As you get a sense of the breath, you can focus on those properties and you can get them into balance too. Ajaan Lee would often have his students, as soon as the breath calmed down and was very still in the body, focus first on fire, the warmth in the body. Where in the body is the warmest spot right now? Focus on that and see if you can magnify it, both in the sense of making it stronger and then letting it spread throughout the body the same way that you've let the breath spread. If things get too warm, you can think of water. Water's cooling. Again, where's the coolest spot in the body? Focus on that and then let that sense of coolness spread. Then try to balance out the two so that it feels just right. Not too hot, not too cold, just like Goldilocks in the porridge. Then you can focus on earth, the sense of solidity in the body. Some people really enjoy this because it gives a sense of being grounded in the meditation. Other people find it oppressive. When things get very solid, they feel like they can't breathe. So if it feels too solid, think of mixing the breath and the earth. Those are the two pairs. Water and fire make one pair, and breath and earth make the other pair. Try to get things into balance. In this way, you make the body a much more comfortable place to settle down. And it's good for your health when you get a sense of these properties from inside. When the body begins to feel out of balance, you can question yourself. Okay, which property is excessive and which one is weak? The Buddha's theory of properties holds that certain properties get provoked. When the wind property is provoked outside, for example, there are windstorms. When the water property is provoked, there are floods. When the fire property is provoked, fires start and then spread. And you find that you can provoke the same things in the body, for good or ill. Often in a lot of illnesses, the sense of the body is not balanced. Even though Western doctors might say that it's due to this or that chemical imbalance, you feel the imbalance in the properties directly. You don't feel chemicals, you don't feel oxygen, but you do feel these properties. And if you're sensitive to them and learn how to strengthen ones that are weak, you can bring things back into balance. When you're feeling lightheaded, think of earth. Think of something that grounds you and keeps you next to the earth. When the body's feeling sluggish, when you're feeling depressed, try to think more of breath to leaven the sense of the body. And of course, when you're feeling too cold or too hot, you can think of the opposite property to bring things back into balance. Now, there are limitations on what you can do with this. One, simply based on the condition of the body, and two, based on the power of your concentration. But as you get a sense of the body as it's felt from the inside, you find that you have a handle on some of these things. You have some control over how your body's going to feel. This is where the analysis into properties is helpful for insight. You see the power of perception. Just hold in mind the perception of warmth, and things will warm up. And the more confidence, or what they call assurance, that you give to that perception of warmth, the stronger the effect is going to be. These are potentials that you can see in action. The extent to which your directed thought, your evaluation, your perceptions really do have an impact on your feelings and how you experience the body right now. And of course, these perceptions also help to depersonalize things. This body is just a lump of elements. It's just a lump of properties, the same properties as everybody else's bodies. The image the Buddha gives is of a butcher sitting at a crossroads, cutting up a cow. Of course, as you cut up the cow, the perception of cow goes away, and it's replaced by the perception of meat or bones or the other organs. In the same way, as you get a sense of the body in terms of its properties, the sense of its being, my body gets replaced simply by, oh, there's earth, there's water, there's wind, there's fire. Around it is space. Then there's consciousness that knows these things. All of these things can be seen as impersonal properties. Space and consciousness are useful for getting beyond the form jhanas into the formless states. In other words, once you've got the breath still and you've got the other elements in balance, try to maintain that sense of being balanced right here. You'll notice that because the breath energy isn't flowing in and out, the sense of the boundaries of the body fades away. Then you see what's still holding everything together, what's still holding your sense that there is a body here, is simply the mental label of form. If you drop that mental label, you have a sense that the body's just a mist, like little dots of water in a cloud. The sense of boundary gets very fuzzy. That's when you focus in on the space between the dots, and that takes you into space, the first of the formless states. This, again, helps both with your concentration and with your insight. The realization that an awful lot of your perception of reality is based on the mental labels you're carrying around, and you have the option of dropping them, replacing them with other labels. In this case, the sense of infinite space. Space is good for when things in the body just can't be brought into balance. Things feel out of whack and nothing you can do seems to get them back into whack, so you can go to space and just hang out there for a while. I think I've told you the story of a Ajaan Lee student who had a voice in her meditation one night, saying she was going to die that night. And sure enough, her body started to feel as if it was all going to fall apart. She said it was like a house on fire. No place in the body she went to offered her any comfort at all. But then she thought of space. So she went to space, hung out there for a while, and then things in the body returned to normal. So of course, she didn't die, and that's how she lived to tell about it. It's a good option to keep in mind when things in the body are not going well. Even before you get to the point where you can hold on to these perceptions to the point of really being thoroughly in, say, the formless attainment of infinite space, just having that perception in mind, you're realizing there is a part of your awareness here that does correspond to space. It's the same as with the bones, with the earth. When you want to make the mind be like earth, you just get in touch with whatever earthiness you can feel inside the body. It helps give a sense of solidity to your awareness. In the same way, space is very useful. You think of things just going through space, and nothing affects the space. Space permeates everything. It goes through atoms out in all directions. There's a passage where Magellana is approached by some women who want to tempt him, and he says it's like trying to paint pictures on space. There's no surface. You can use the same image in your mind when difficult things are happening. Difficult things are being said, being done. They can just go right through you without leaving any trace. It's a good perception to have in mind to replace your ordinary perceptions of being struck and offended by the words and having to react to the words. Space doesn't react. So these perceptions are useful in lots of ways. It's good to familiarize yourself with them and realize that holding on to some of these new concepts opens up entire new dimensions in your experience and in your ability to deal skillfully with all kinds of issues. This is one of the reasons it's good to be open to new concepts, new ways of looking at things, and not be narrowly focused on just what comes from our original culture. If that were our attitude, we wouldn't have many opportunities at all to really get to know the potentials within the body and within the mind, and we'd be depriving ourselves of a lot of the tools that are really useful for understanding how we create suffering and understanding how to bring that suffering to an end. The comma of concentration. Years back, I was asked to write a review of a book on positive psychology, the psychology of how people find happiness, and to approach it from a Buddhist point of view. One of the things I noticed as I was reading through the book was that there was no consideration of what the impact of your search for happiness might have on other people. The writer, as a psychologist, was claiming to be morally neutral, which is supposedly scientific, but there was no consideration at all that your search for happiness might harm others or yourself. So I pointed that out, that from a Buddhist point of view, this was a huge gap and a huge missing part of the equation. The editor of the magazine said he was surprised that I'd focused on karma as the missing factor. He was expecting something more along the lines of emptiness, say, or the bodhisattva vow that you shouldn't be looking for happiness anyhow. But I was surprised that he was surprised because from the very beginning, the teaching was all about happiness, and it was all about karma. That's how the Buddha differentiated his teachings from others. He was a Kamavadin, someone who taught karma. This relates to another surprising incident. I was asked to give a talk on karma to a group of meditators on the relationship between karma and meditation. I spoke about how the teachings on karma are all designed to show that it is possible to master a skill. If karma, at least as the Buddha taught it, were totally deterministic, there'd be no way to develop a skill, and there'd be no reason to teach at all. After all, people wouldn't be able to change their ways. Everything they did would be totally predetermined. If, on the other hand, everything were totally random, there'd be no ability to develop a skill either, because something you might master today wouldn't mean anything tomorrow if everything kept changing in a random way. The way the Buddha taught karma was that past actions have an influence on the present, and there is a pattern to how that influence works out, but the present moment is also shaped by your present actions, your present decisions, and you have some freedom in shaping those present decisions. It's precisely this understanding of karma that allows you to develop skills. As I was explaining this to the meditators, I kept getting blank looks. I found out later that they had been taught that meditation was not about doing anything at all. You're not supposed to do in meditation, just be. But that sets you up for all kinds of problems because if you're going to understand concentration as you attain it, you have to understand it as a kind of action. Otherwise, you hit some non-dual states and you think you've become one with the non-duality at the basis of all reality, and then you get stuck. But if you see that even non-dual is a perception, a fabrication, an action, then you can take it apart. So the teachings on action, on karma, are directly relevant to how we meditate. First, there's the basic principle of developing a skill. You look at your actions and notice the effect that they have, both immediate and long-term. Think of the Buddha's instructions to Rahula. Before you act, ask yourself, what's your intention? Because after all, the intention is the karma. It determines the quality of the karma. If you expect that the action is going to harm yourself or others, don't do it. If you don't foresee any harm, go ahead and do it. While you're acting, look for the results that are coming immediately, because sometimes some of the results do come right away. You put your finger on a stove, and it's not going to wait until the next lifetime before it burns. Other times, though, as when you plant a seed, you won't see the results until a later time, so you've got to look for those long-term results too, after you finish the action. If you see the action is a mistake while you're doing it, you stop. If you see that it was a mistake after you did it, you resolve not to repeat it. That's how you learn any skill. And it's not the case that the Buddha leaves you to explore everything. He gives advice on things not to do under any circumstances. You don't want to break the precepts. You don't want to engage in wrong speech, not only in lying but also in divisive speech, harsh speech, idle chatter. And you avoid greed, ill will, and the view that your actions don't yield results, don't make a difference. Those precepts are principles you don't have to test. Just use them. But you find there are a lot of other things that you do have to test in practice. As you get more and more sensitive to the impact of your actions, you keep looking for subtler and subtler forms of harm that they might be causing. But it's important to understand what harm means here. As the Buddha said, if you break the precepts, you're harming yourself. It's interesting. If you kill other people, kill other animals, he said, you're really doing harm to yourself. They get killed once, but you may have to endure a long, long time of suffering because of that action. If you want to harm other people, he said, you get them to break the precepts because, after all, they're agents, too. They're engaging in actions and they're going to be experiencing happiness or pain based on their actions. So when you're thinking thoughts of goodwill for yourself, you're basically thinking, may I act in a skillful way so I can create the causes for happiness? And you think the same for other people. May they act in skillful ways too. And that's a thought you can have even for people who have been destructive, horrible, and cruel. Your goodwill for them expresses itself that way. May they understand the causes for true happiness and have the strength and willingness to act on them. But the important principle is that you're working on developing skills. learning how to be more skillful in how you do things, more skillful in how you say things, more skillful in how you think, how you order your mind. And this is where karma comes into the meditation, particularly when you engage in directed thought and evaluation. Some people say that when you get in the first jhana, the directed thought and evaluation are just an unfortunate wobbly or unsteady part of the concentration, but actually they're the work of right resolve. As the Buddha said, noble right resolve is the directed thought and evaluation in your concentration. And what are you evaluating? You're evaluating your actions. You sit here and you choose to focus on the breath. That's an intention right there. And the next question is, how do you maintain that intention? How do you keep supporting it with other skillful intentions? This is where you have to deal with the different techniques of how you get the mind to settle down, how you focus on the breath, how you focus on the parts of the body, whichever topic you choose as your theme. Then you make adjustments both in the mind and in the theme so that they fit snugly together. Then do your best to maintain that snugness, to keep an interest in it. Learn how to ask questions about what you're staying with. And one of the big questions is, to what extent is there still some disturbance in this state of concentration? If you're perceptive, you'll notice that the disturbance is in what you're doing. So is there something that you're doing that you can drop and still stay concentrated? In the beginning, you don't want to drop things too fast because you need a fair amount of directed thought and evaluation to get everything together and keep them together in a balanced way. The Buddha's image is of a bathman. Bathmen in those days would prepare your soap dough for you. Instead of having a bar of soap, they would have some powder and they'd mix it with water and create ball of dough like bread dough. Then you'd rub that over your body as you were bathing. The bathman's job was to knead the water into the soap dough so that everything was well mixed. Like bread dough, you want to make sure that all the flour has been moistened, but you don't want any excess water to drip out. You want everything just right. So the bathman has to use discernment in working the water through the dough. In the same way the Buddha says, you work the sense of ease and well-being, the sense of rapture, as it develops in your concentration, though the body. Because in the next step, you want to be able to just sit there immersed in the well-being, as if the body were a large lake cooled by a spring of water welling up from within. In this case, you're not outside of the dough working the water in. You're actually totally immersed in the water. The water here stands for pleasure, and you're not going to be able to feel immersed in the water of pleasure unless you've worked it through the body. This is why Ajaan Lee talks about the various breath energies and breath channels in the body. His instructions give you some ideas about how you might direct that sense of ease through the body, or think of it spreading through the body, to work its way around any pains you may have, to work its way around any sense of blockage. Then, when everything is well moistened with the pleasure, you can drop the directed thought and evaluation because they're the disturbance there. Just allow yourself to be immersed in the sense of ease. But you still have to maintain it. You still have to stay with the breath. Otherwise, if you just drift off into the ease, you lose your balance, you lose your focus, and then you sit there without any real clarity or alertness, or you lose the concentration entirely. So there's still a certain amount of tension required to keep the object in mind. Remember, you've got to maintain that intention to stay here with clarity. So it's the same principle that the Buddha taught to Rahula. You do something and then you look at the results. And then if the results are not what you like, you change. This is a kind of karma. It's good to keep that in mind because sometimes you get into states of non-duality or a sense of the body disappearing and you think you've hit something cosmic, but in actuality, you've just hit another perception. The important thing is that you learn how to keep that questioning attitude in mind. Where is there still disturbance? And look for it not so much in things outside, but in the actions of the mind. You see this especially clearly when you're working with pain. The real disturbance there is not the pain. It's the mind's commentary or the perceptions you're bringing to it. The Buddha has that tetrad in his breath meditation instructions where he talks about training yourself to breathe 1, with a sense of rapture, 2, with a sense of pleasure, 3, sensitive to mental fabrication, i.e., feelings and perceptions, and then 4, calming mental fabrication. Those first 2 steps give you, basically, Ajaan Lee's recommendations for how you start working with pain. There may be pain in one part of the body, but you focus on getting a sense of ease and well-being in another part. Then you allow the ease and well-being to spread through the pain, to loosen things up. Then, in the next 2 steps, you're basically taking Ajahn Mahabua's approach, which is when you notice, here's the pain, but what are the perceptions that make that pain a mental issue? Learn how to question them. That's how you calm them. In other words, you replace a disturbing perception, one that says, the pain has seized the body, the pain hates me, the pain is after me, whatever crazy ideas you may have about the pain, with a perception that's less disturbing. And a lot of your crazy perceptions are hidden behind some more sane-sounding ideas. Even the idea that the pain has invaded your leg. Actually, your leg is still a leg, and your sensation of the leg is just earth, water, wind, and fire, solidity, coolness, energy, and warmth. The pain is something different. The leg stays as a leg, but the pain keeps changing, coming and going. And when it comes, it's not coming at you. As soon as you detect a moment of pain, you can perceive it as going away, going away. Each moment of pain, as it appears, is already going away from you. If you can learn how to use those perceptions, they're calming. The mind can then stay with the pain and not feel pained by it. So here again, it's a question of your actions. The perceptions you choose are determining whether or not you're going to suffer from things here in the present moment. All too often, we don't think we have a choice. We have our old set of perceptions. We're equipped with perceptions we've picked up from who knows where and who knows when, and for most of us, that's what reality is. But the Buddha says that you can question them, replace them with new ones, and they'll have a different impact on the mind. So in all these ways, you have to keep remembering that as you meditate, you're engaged in karma, you're engaged in actions, and there are things you can do more skillfully that give results in the immediate present and on into the future. We all want happiness, but our problem is that we act under the influence of ignorance. We don't see how our perceptions and thoughts are shaping reality. All we see is the product and we don't like it. Sometimes we like it, sometimes we don't, but it seems to be like a crapshoot. You never know what's going to come up, and that's because you're not paying careful attention to what you're doing in your physical, verbal, and mental actions. But the meditation gives you a sensitivity to your mental actions while you meditate, and to all 3 kinds of action as you go through the day. And the teaching on karma reminds you that you can change what you're doing right now. You do have that freedom of choice. The act of meditation, by making the mind more sensitive, more mindful, more inquisitive, puts you in a position where you can take more and more advantage of that freedom for the sake of the happiness you want.